I'm Diana Wentworth, and I'm so excited to be with you. I'm the co-founder of the Inside Edge Foundation for Education. It's been a forum for thought leaders and all kinds of people who are activists in the world where they meet and greet and expand who they are. And we've been recording 1,500 of our past speakers. And we're going to take the very best of these and offer them on our YouTube channel. We're starting to post them weekly. So what you want to do is go to our YouTube channel and to subscribe to it, and you'll get all kinds of information about what we're offering. It's so thrilling to be offering this legacy to you now. It feels really good. Cohen is somebody I've admired for half my life, ever since I first spotted him in Helsinki as we were entering the Soviet Union. And he's someone who just lives the title of his talk about being the light, because the first time I saw him, he walked into the lobby of a hotel and I don't know, the room just lit up with his presence and his kindness. So we're thrilled to have Alan with us this morning, and he's going to lead us in an opening meditation.
Okay. Hi, Diana. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here. Lovely to be here. Okay, well, I invite you to get quiet for a moment. So if you don't mind closing your eyes for just a couple minutes. We can begin by taking some long, slow, deep breaths. We begin to make that sacred journey from the head to the heart. And even while all kinds of thoughts pull us in different directions, there's a place inside us we can go to that is soft, safe, and welcoming, and peaceful, and whole. You know that place. So we consciously accept the life force that is flowing in us, through us, around us. We see ourselves not as limited physical beings, but we see ourselves as magnificent, radiant, spiritual beings. And if you'd care to visualize the other people in this meeting, wherever they are around the planet, use your imagination. Joined by a grid of light, a web of light that affirms that we're not alone, that we do walk this path together, and that we've come together for a sacred purpose. To remind ourselves of the light we are, the light we are here to shine, and the good that we have come to receive and share. So it's on this note that we begin our meeting. And we ask and pray that each person here receive a gift, something you can use in your practical life, something uplifting, something uphealing, and that by coming together we become stronger to go out and live our lives at the highest octave. All is well, and here we are. And so it is.
Thank you, Alan. What a joy it is to have you with us this morning. You'll see my background is Russia, and the Inside Edge came out of a life-changing trip into the Soviet Union with 80 leaders, world leaders, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Dennis Weaver, Mike Farrell, Dr. Patch Adams, and Alan Cohen, who impacted me so many years ago. I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here, Alan. Alan has written 30 books, which means that he's written a book for almost every single year since we met. Some of his books include the best-selling A Course in Miracles Made Easy, the award-winning A Deep Breath of Life, and the classic Are You as Happy as Your Dog? I won't go into all of his credentials because I don't want to take 1 minute of time away from Alan. So turning it over to you, Alan, right now.
Thank you, dear. Well, we're living in interesting times, aren't we? There's an old Chinese adage, may you live during interesting times. And I think these times really win that prize. And, Dickens wrote, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And so what I'd like to do today is talk about some of the ways that we can deal with the worst of times in some ways and turn them into the best of times. It's a very challenging era on our planet, is it not? We have COVID running rampant, and we have very polarized politics and lots of fear and lots of protectionism. And we also have lots of love and lots of expansionism. So what I'd like to do today is shift the balance from a sense of defensiveness and fear and hidingness to expansiveness and celebration and deep self-expression and transformation. What I'd like to do is give you 5 tips. People like lists, so I made a list of 5, and I think each one of them is very practical, and you'll have a chance to chat about it a little bit later. We have an opening question for people, Diana, or is that later?
That's later, and we'll call on them.
Never mind. Okay, just want to make sure I got the format clear. Okay, so the first one is actually the most important one. They're all the most important ones. But the suggestion is to spin everything in your favor. And this actually represents a coaching technique that I use. I teach a class called Holistic Life Coaching. And one of the themes is reframing. And what this means is that you take a situation that appears to be working against you, and you find a way to look at it from a different angle that makes it work for you. Now, if you watch a lot of news and hear a lot of gossip, it's very easy to fall into the belief that what's happening in the world is working against us. However, I want to suggest that there's a way to look at it that makes it work for us. I like to give some very cute examples of reframing. One is about a great Argentinian golfer named Robert De Vincenzo, who won a big tournament, and he received a big check. And as he was exiting the clubhouse from the golf match that day, he was interrupted by a young woman in tears. And she said, my baby's very sick, and if he doesn't get an operation, he's going to die. I don't have any money. So De Vincenzo, in his big heart, took the winning check, a very large sum, and he signed it over to her when he placed it in her hands. And he said, make a good life for the baby. Well, a week later, he was at the same club, and some of the guys approached him and said, we heard you met this woman in the parking lot last week. Yes, yes. And she told you she has a sick baby. Yes, yes. And you gave her your check. Yes, yes. Well, guess what? She's a con artist. And she's known to go around and fleece people like that. And he said, you mean there's no sick baby that's dying? They said, not at all. He said, well, that's the best news I've heard all week. And so, everything has 2 sides. I had a similar experience, actually. I was shopping in the parking lot of Kmart one day, heading for my car. And this little old Japanese man, probably 80 years old, very thin and frail, came up to me and says, I'm so hungry. Can you please help me? He had a bag of soda cans, like he was collecting recycling to get money over his shoulder. I felt so bad for the man. So I opened my wallet and I gave him $20. He said, thank you so much. You made my day. And then he walks to a brand new Toyota 4x4 pickup. And he puts his cans in the back of the truck and drives away. I thought, the guy just took me for a ride. But I thought, well, isn't it nice that there's one less elderly homeless man roaming the streets of Hawaii? And so, there's another way to look at everything. We lived out in the country in Hawaii for a long time, and we had a rat and mice problem, so we got a cat. And one morning I was had a very deep, profound meditation, and just feeling God and feeling high. And I came down to the living room, and there was a dead rat beheaded on our living room floor, and I got disgusted. So I said to Dee, my partner, I said, "Oh, I got to take that. I got a shovel." I picked it up, and she said, "Aren't we glad that the cat is doing her job?" And so I took that experience as a metaphor that, at every moment in our life, there's a dead rat somewhere. There's something disgusting or gross or scary. And at every moment, there's some force that is offsetting that. And I want to suggest that as scary and weird and bizarre as the world is these days, as dark as it gets, that's how much it calls forth the light. And if you're participating in this meeting, then I want to define you as a light worker. That it's no accident that you're on a spiritual path of any kind. It's no accident you're here today. That there's something in you that has said at some point or another, there must be more. And I know that the world can't be all that it's been made out to be. And I wish to make a change in it. So let's take this pandemic thing and look at it for a moment from a different angle. So it's hard, it's scary. People are dying, businesses closed down. It's very sad. Where I was living on Big Island of Hawaii, lots of restaurants closed down, good restaurants that were open for years. And I really felt for those owners. A lot of people died. Very sad, it's tragic. And at the same time, it called forth things and people that would not have been called forth if times were easier. They say that people are like tea bags, that it's only when we're in hot water that our true flavor comes forth. And I heard about a man in Australia who was passing by a long line of people lined up for public assistance for money. And he went to his bank and he took out $10,000 and he gave everybody in line $100. And he said, that was the best $10,000 I ever spent. He said, when I saw the light on those people's faces, my heart was full. Then I heard about teams of flight attendants in England who had been grounded, and they were setting up hospitality centers in hospitals to support the COVID frontline workers, refresh them during their breaks. So they found something to do with their time that was productive. What I did was, when the lockdown started in April or so, I started for the first time a daily YouTube live. I called it at the time a daily dose of sanity. And it was a 15-minute free event where I just gave an inspirational talk every day for 2 months. And I got thousands of people who signed up for that. They loved that. And then we switched to every week. It's still going on every week now instead of every day. It's called the Weekly Wave of Sanity. And that was just my way of contributing. Everybody had their own way of contributing. So I found with the pandemic that people were either in the camp of fear or the camp of love and trust. Now, I'm a Course in Miracles student, and the Course in Miracles says that every event, every moment, every thought, every feeling, every word, every action is a choice between love and fear. And it says there's nothing in between, that either you're loving or you're fearing. And I know people who went into hiding on day one of the pandemic and they haven't come out yet. They're just petrified. I know a fellow who, his wife became so scared that they only went out once a month for shopping. And he was less fearful. He would go out and he would come back. He would buy like a case of bottled water from Costco that were wrapped in big cellophane casing. And she would make him take every single bottle and personally sterilize it That's how fearful she was. And then he was out of work and he had the opportunity to get a job. And she told him, if you take the job, I'll divorce you because I don't want anybody going out of my house and coming in every day. Now, I cannot believe, my friends, that that's how we were born to live. And I also know people who went to work, who went to feed the homeless, who volunteered, who went out of their shell to serve people. And none of them got sick. Isn't that interesting? There's also a study that was done by the US Navy many years ago. There's a huge influenza pandemic, far worse than coronavirus. It was like, they called it the Spanish flu. It was the early 1800s. And a lot more people died during that pandemic than the coronavirus pandemic. Anyway, during that time, the Navy did a study and they wanted to find out how to work with influenza. And so they got 50 young sailors to volunteer to be inoculated with influenza. And they sent them to this place called Goat Island, where there were a lot of flu patients. And these sailors were inoculated, they breathed flu germs, and they interacted with flu victims. And the Navy doctors just waited around to see what would happen to these guys. Well, guess what? Not one of them got the flu. And the answer is not physical, the answer is metaphysical, the answer is spiritual. These guys had no fear, and they were willing to go through the experience, and they did not resist it. And many scientific and medical studies have shown that fear is the great immunity demobilizer. That the more scared you are, the lower your immunity becomes. The more courageous you are, the more trusting you are, the higher. Now, I'm not suggesting not wear a mask or social distancing. I mean, those are all effective if you believe in them. But at the same time, yeah, I have a Japanese doctor who's one of my clients, and he ran an influenza clinic for 10 years. I think he still does. He worked with influenza patients for 10 years, intimately and intensively, and he never got the flu once. Now, how do you explain that? Because I believe that mindset and heart set and spirit set protect us. So we might say that love and trust are the great protectors. And so a lot of us have been called to dig in and find a place of courage and willingness and faith. There's an old poem, fear knocked at the door, faith answered, and no one was there. And if you sit and watch the news all day, you're going to get really scared because the news makes its money on scaring people. And it's been said that there are two trains leaving the station. And they're just going in different directions. And as the trains are slowly departing, you could theoretically jump from one to the other if you wanted to change your mind. But the farther they get away, the harder it is. In fact, it becomes impossible at some point to jump from one to the other. Well, I think what's happening in our civilization is that there are two trains that are leaving the station. One is a train of fear, and one is a train of faith. And there was a time perhaps when you could straddle or jump back and forth, but there's such a polarity in realities these days that you pretty much have to decide which train you're on. And they're not physical trains, of course, there's trains of thought. And we're seeing a political division in our world that a lot of people are afraid and resistant. A lot of people are willing to move ahead from the heart. And so I'm imagining that if you're with us today, that there's something inside you that says, I want to be on the train of faith. I want to trust that somehow all is well, somehow I am well, and somehow we're going to come out on the other side of this. And if I can just serve, we're going to come to that in a moment, about serving instead of dropping into fear. Okay, so the next tip, number 2, is do whatever you need to do to stay in your right mind. This kind of relates to our theme for today. That all of us have a right mind and a wrong mind, and that wrong mind is guided by fear, and that right mind is guided by love. Now, you know, I do. We have dips. We go up and down, in and out. We're feeling good. We're feeling bad. We're feeling confident. We're feeling fearful. We're feeling all as well. We're feeling nothing as well. And so it's really incumbent, behooves each of us to do whatever we need to do to stay in our right mind. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, you know, what I like to do is I like to walk my dogs. That makes me sane. I like to write. I do my creative writing. I do yoga. I listen to inspirational tapes. And if I start to dip or get fearful, then I do something that corrects my mind. There's a way of thinking that leads to peace, and there's a way of thinking that leads to chaos. If you want to see what chaos is, look at the first presidential debate, where people just were totally out of control and there was no semblance of order. And for the second debate, they very wisely muted the opposing guy's microphone because, you know, it's kind of like a metaphor, isn't it? If you want to mute the voice of fear, then the voice of truth. Now, I'm saying one candidate is true, not what isn't, but although I believe that, but that's another story. So, you know, you have to mute that voice of fear when it wants to interrupt the voice of trust. So, you know, you're thinking, well, in a voice, oh, what if I get sick? What if I lose my job? What if the world goes to hell? What if so-and-so gets elected president? On and on. So you cannot afford to take that detour. Those are detours that literally lead to hell, because then you're in a hellish frame of mind. So what I've been learning to do over many years is to bring my mind back sooner. And it used to be it would take hours or days where I'd be upset about something. And now usually in a matter of minutes or sometimes moments, I could bring my mind back. Now I remember lessons from A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles says, I could see peace instead of this. So try that out for sight and think of something that's troubling you. Relationship issue, a health issue, financial issue. We all have something that's troubling us, don't we? Now take that affirmation. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace. You get a big bill. Oh my God, too much. Well, you know, I could see peace instead of this. That at this very moment, I do not have to go into sense of victim. And A Course in Miracles gives another affirmation. I'm not a victim of the world I see. In fact, it says I'm generating the world I see by the thoughts I choose to see it. Another one is a happy outcome to all things is sure. These are lessons from A Course in Miracles, 365 lessons. A happy outcome to all things is sure. And reminding you of a John Lennon quote. I don't know whether it's a song or a quote. He said, everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. I think they used that in the Marigold movie, the Marigold Hotel movie. And so what he was saying is exactly what the Course in Miracles is saying, that all disturbances of all appearances of negation and victimization and polarity, they are just part of the storyline, but that story is going to end up okay. Now, if you think about your life, think of all the hard times you've been through. Marital divorces, deaths of spouses, financial ups and downs, health challenges. Somehow you're still here. Somehow we made it to this moment. And I call that grace. One of my books is called The Grace Factor. And look at the crazy things I've done in my life. I've done some really, really stupid things. Once, in the early 70s, I went to a rock concert with my girlfriend in Puerto Rico, rock festival. And, you know, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll in those days. Some of you were around. And one night, my girlfriend was sleeping in a tent with me, and then I got up and I took a walk on the beach, and I did something, probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. People would just put pills in my hand, and I would just take them. And I was drinking. It was just, I went into this paranoid fantasy that these local Puerto Rican guys had raped and killed my girlfriend. They were going to come and kill me. And I went to this like horrible bad trip of a tailspin. I thought, this is it. I'm not going to make it till the morning. Then I remember the drugs wore off and the morning came, and I was sitting on a rock and the sun was coming up. And I realized there must be a God, because this dark hell world that I had gone into was a complete illusion that had made up a very scary story, and I believed and I went into it, but there was no reality or substance to the story. And somehow the sun came up. My girlfriend was alive and I was alive. There's no problem whatsoever, except the fact that I took a lot of stupid drugs. And I realized that God's picture of my potential was far greater than my limiting beliefs about it. That all the fears and pains and sorrows and suffering in my life were basically stories that I made up. And they were erroneous stories. And even while those erroneous stories were going on, there was grace. But somehow love superseded fear. In fact, the great yogi Paramahansa Yogananda said, grace supersedes karma. So if you've studied yoga or Eastern spirituality, karma is very big on that plate, isn't it? And he was one of the greatest yogis of all time. Yogananda said that grace supersedes karma, which means no matter what your karma is, no matter what messes you've made, no matter what a mess we've made of this world, and it's a mess, that somehow there is grace that takes us by the hand and leads us out of it. We're going to come out of the coronavirus, we're going to come out of this political ridiculousness, and we're going to learn from it. We're going to be better for it. We're going to be stronger for it. That which does not kill me makes me stronger. So that's point number two. You want to do whatever it takes to stay in your right mind. Now, one thing that connected to that point number three is to deepen self-care. This is the fun part. So I do a lot of coaching. I teach coaches. I train coaches. And one of the most effective methods of coaching is to ask the client, are you doing enough in your life to take good care of yourself? Let me ask you that question now. How many of you are taking really good care of yourself? Raise your hand. Good. How many could do better? Yeah. Okay. So, a client has overwhelmed with family, overwhelmed with work. I say, have you done anything you love lately? Well, not so much. What would you love to do? Well, I like to walk in the park. Cool. What do you like? What else do you like to do? I like to write in my journal. What else do you like to do? I like to play my guitar. Okay. Have you done those lately? Not really. Okay, so here's my prescription. I make a joke. I say, okay, the Lord Jesus Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Jehovah, everybody's speaking to me right now. They're giving me a message for you. They go, really? I go, yeah. I'm now channeling the highest message from the universe. Really? Do you have a pencil? Yeah. Can you write this down? Yeah, okay. And I milk it for about a minute. And I really have right on the edge. And I say, okay, here's what God wants you to do. Okay, what God wants you to do is walk in the park and play your guitar and write your journal. This is the answer I'm looking for. And we go, okay. And the idea is that when you start to relax and you start to get a massage and you start to sit in your hot tub, you start to walk your dog, you start to watch a funny movie, you start to make love, you start to do something that is soothing to your soul, you raise your frequency. And you start to see with different eyes. and you start to have access to information and guidance that you did not have when you were stuck. And so while it may seem self-indulgent, irrelevant to step back and walk in the park for 20 or 30 minutes, that can be absolutely your most powerful key to get on top of your work, of your relationship, of your health. Pretty much all diseases are stress related. And if I start to feel ill or have anything going on with my body, the first thing I do is step back and start to relax and take better care of myself. And you will be amazed at the healing that comes when you engage in deep self-care. We're going to have a little breakout afterwards, and I'd like you to talk about, what is a self-care method that you use that works, and what have you not been doing that you could be doing that would work? It's a very simple question, but it could be the key to your turnaround, because people who love themselves see clearly, and people who love themselves are in the perfect position to help others. You cannot help somebody else when you're hurting, usually. You can force yourself, but you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you put your child's on, like I tell you on the airplane. Okay, guide number 4, that you want to go into a consciousness of service rather than protection. That pretty much everything you see on the news is all about self-protection. I can't believe when I go to the dentist. When I was a kid, I used to go to this lovely old Jewish dentist named Dr. Herbert Siegel. He had this really cute little office, and his wife was his assistant. That was the whole scene. And he would wash his hands and start working on my mouth and tell me bad jokes. And he's this very sweet man, like everybody's grandpa. Now you go to the dentist, it's like a nuclear safety zone. They're all wearing these gowns with masks and hoods and these shields, and they have triple sanitization, and I have to wear a mask until I work on my teeth. Oh, my God. Look at these guys who went into Fukushima. And I thought, my first thought is, is this the way we were really born to live? You really think that this is God's will for how people live on earth? We walk around in protection of knights of armor, knights' suits of armor? Something's wrong with this picture, friends. This is not how we were born to live. In deep fear and deep protection, deep defensive. I'm not saying you shouldn't wear a mask or wash your hands. That's all helpful. But we need to really rethink, what train am I on? Do I really need to hide out from life? Is more separation really helping people? Or could people coming together help more? I love these videos. Lots of videos of people, doing playing the music, playing orchestra, and they're all coordinated, and there's 50 people all over the world, and they all come together, all singing the same song. So that's a really cool antidote to the pandemic, because what it's saying is that even though we are physically separated, we are spiritually united. That the fact that we're in different places, even if we were in lockdown, nothing is going to stop us from coming together. God bless Zoom. I wish I had bought stock in Zoom about a year ago. I'd be a multi-billionaire by now. But, it's not ideal. But here we are, there's people from all over the world. You're on the same screen. We're in the same room. We're sharing the same content. I do a lot of Zoom meetings. We have people from South Africa and India and Japan all coming together on the same screen. And I used to not like Zoom because, it's not as intimate as being in person, but we've had some deeply intimate meetings on Zoom where people share stuff from their heart, and there's tears and laughter, and people are chatting support messages to each other. It's almost like being together in person. So my belief is that physical distancing and lockdowns cannot stop us from being together. Right now, you and I are being together somehow across racial barriers, across cultural barriers, across national barriers, across political barriers. There's something that is bringing us together. Nothing's going to stop us from being together somehow. And, when Diane and I went to Russia in 1986, it was amazing because, what we found was that the Russian people and the American people were basically the same at heart. That was a big aha for all of us. Now, at that time, we had been taught that the Russians are evil, and they've been taught Americans are evil, and have nuclear bombs pointed at each other. But we got together in the same room. We talked about our children and our home and our health and our visions and our spirituality. And when we took off all of our political clothing, we were all the same. And we had some very tearful, beautiful moments. I remember Mike Farrell was on the trip, and so was Tom Sewell, the photographer. And we had I don't know if you remember this, Diana, but the last night of the trip, we had a banquet. And some of our folks invited some of the Russians we had met to come to our banquet. And we gave them gifts. And the KGB infiltrated this banquet. And they saw that Russians were receiving gifts from us. They were not happy about that. And they started to take the gifts out of the hands of the Russians. And Tom Sewell, photographer, went up. I remember he had big gonads. I had to compliment him this. He went to this KGB guy who just confiscated gifts from this Russian guy, and he literally physically took them out of the KGB guy's hand and put them back in the hands of this Russian guy. He said, "These are gifts from us to this man. You're not taking them away." And the KGB guy backed down. And what Tom was doing in that moment, he was making an affirmation that we are going to connect, that we are not going to let you stand between our connection. This is going to happen. And I really, it was just a couple of years after that. A lot of groups were going over the town. There were doctors groups and entertainers groups, and a lot of groups doing citizen diplomacy missions. And it was just a few years after that the Soviet Union fell. And I truly believe, I believe this deeply in my heart, that all those human beings like Diane and I and those people in our group, we made a heart connection that was so valid and so substantial that the consciousness of fear could no longer contain that love. And I literally believe that all of us who went over and did those missions were instrumental. It was not political, it was spiritual, instrumental in falling the Soviet Union. And then we used to quote President Eisenhower, who said that one day the people of the world will want peace so much that the governments will have to get out of their way and let them have it. That was the theme of our work in those days. And I don't know that it's that much different these days. I think that one of these days, people of the world want well-being so much, and connection and safety and harmony and joining so much, that the governments and the media and the fear-mongers will have to get out of the way and let them have it. And I think that that's what's happening now. And so we're on the train together. So let me come to my last point. And that's that trust in the process is key. And Course in Miracles says that trust would settle every problem now. And the Course goes on to say that whenever you feel fear, trust is absent. And when you reinstate trust, fear is absent. And a lot of us know Jerry Jampolsky, he's a wonderful Course in Miracles teacher. He said that he used to get depressed. And he said that when he got depressed, he would go out and volunteer somewhere. He would help somebody. And he said he discovered that you cannot be helping somebody and be depressed at the same time. You have to be on one train or the other. And when you jump on the trust train, then the depression train has to disappear. Now, some of you in show business, I know when Inside Edge started, a lot of people in show business. My teacher used to be a classical dancer, spiritual teacher. And she said that once, I think she was at the Hollywood Bowl or somewhere, And she would look out at the audience. She'd look out at the audience and feel really nervous about what they're going to think of me. Am I going to fall? I'm going to make a fool of myself. She said, then one day she thought, well, look at those lovely people out there. Maybe my dance performance can improve their lives. We kind of get back to the other principle now, but same thing. So she said, she said, when I quit worrying about what will people think of me and how can I help people instead of how can I help people, everything shifted. And when I teach my coaches the same principle, I say, if you're sitting there worrying, am I going to be a good coach? Are they going to like me? Are they come back and they pay me? Are they going to badmouth me? You're finished. You cannot do any decent coaching when you're busy worrying about your ego, about how people will see you. But when you shift to, wow, I can make a difference in this person's life. Wow, I can help relieve this person's suffering. Wow, I can help lessen this person's fear. Then everything shifts and you're on a different train. So let's get back to trust. So if you trusted that everything's going to turn out all right, what would be different? Once again, think of some particular challenge you're having, a real estate challenge, a financial challenge, a relationship challenge. If I trusted that everything was going to turn out right, how would I be approaching this differently? And all of a sudden you get insights that guide you. And so here we are together on this date, on the eve of a big election, on the eve when the pandemic is still happening. It's lessening in many ways, but it's still happening. On the eve when, there are rifts in families now that are horrible. There are people who have political rifts where they're on the verge of divorce because one partner wants one thing and one partner. Is politics a good reason to end a marriage? It's the worst reason to end a marriage. My teacher used to say, there's always some common ground that can unite us. And my teacher also used to say that a mystic meets on a point of agreement. And I remember back in 2016, I was watching the presidential debates and they're at each other's throats. And then the moderator asked one question that stunned me. And they asked Hillary Clinton, what do you like and respect about Mr. Trump? She said, well, his family supports him. And he said, what do you like about Hillary Clinton? Well, she's a fighter. So in that moment, in that one moment, there was a spark of joining and mutual respect that has been pretty much absent since that day, sorry to say. However, there are ways that we can join. Let's not fight over politics. Let's not fight over our belief systems. Let's come together, shall we? So here we are. We all have choices to make. And it seems that there's many, many different choices, but there's really only one. It's between fear and love, between defensiveness and trust, between flowing and resistance. And I guarantee you that the moment we get off of this meeting, you will have choices to make. And if you remember one thing from my talk, just please remember, okay, what's before me is a choice between fear and love. Which one am I choosing? Christians have a little band that said WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, I'd like to substitute, what would love do? WWLD, what would love, I have a voice of fear and a voice of love. The voice of fear says this, the voice of love says this. So which one would I choose to? I have to make this choice many times a day, and I often fall, but then I pick myself back up, and here we are.
Alan, we have just a couple minutes before we go to the breakout room. Is there anything you'd like to just complete this part?
That was it. That was it.
It's so amazing. I'm remembering being in Russia with you and what you said, that we were one of two groups that went in at the same time.
Yeah.
And we were the first ones in. And Gorbachev later told Rama Vernon, who was the leader of our group, he said it was groups like yours that made all the difference in legislation.
He actually said that, huh? Wow,
He
cool.
actually acknowledged that. It's amazing. And we want to ask you about your new book too. So Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's called the Master Keys of Healing.
And Rebecca, can you show the picture too?
Yeah. And I've been working in the healing field for 40 years or even more. And I've discovered that healing is not a mystery. Healing is not random. Healing is not for lucky people, that there are actually things we can do in our life that facilitate our physical, emotional, mental, financial, and relationship healing. And there are very, very clear universal principles we can put into action. So this is for people who want to be healed and people who want to give healing. There's a lot of great points there. So coming out today, today's day one of its public availability, and I hope people enjoy it. There's a lot in there.
We're going to be giving 3 copies of that away in just a few minutes. And you also do life coach training, and you have YouTube Live Weekly and all of that. Give us some brief.
Yeah, I have a 6-month training for holistic life coaches, and it's a certifying course. And it teaches you how to coach, whether you want to do it full-time, part-time, earn money, don't earn money, incorporate it into your current profession. It's a very comprehensive, deep, transformational. It changes the lives of coaches as well as the clients. So that starts in January. And then I do a weekly YouTube every Wednesday at noon Pacific time. And it's a 15 or 20-minute live sharing on what's happening in the world and how to keep your head in a good place. Go to my YouTube channel, Alan Cohen, Alan H. Cohen. Well, once again, I want to thank you so much for inviting me. Diane, it's so great to see you again. What a blessing. And nice to meet all my new friends here. Thank you for coming. Let's just take a moment to close out with a moment of vision. We recognize that we have come together guided by spirit, and that same spirit that pulls us together will guide us through our days. So we see each of us going through the remainder of this day and the coming week and the coming months and our coming life as enfolded with light, enfolded with love, enfolded with protection. We see each person here as a shining light, that wherever we go, we uplift, we soothe, we heal, we nurture. Whoever looks upon us, whoever interacts with us feels better for their interaction. And we see at a very deep level that the great spirit that created the entire universe lives and works and breathes and heals through us. We acknowledge each person here as a divine being, come to share your gifts and receive them. And we see that the world is a better place for our being together today and for all the gifts we're taking with us from today. Love is present.